I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, we've been saying it for a long time. Go back to our videos, folks. Where is Steele? Get Steele to testify. And now we have news that Christopher Steele, the man behind the Trump dossier, the Steele dossier, the scandalous, salacious dossier about prostitutes and pee and in the hotel room and all this nonsense, Cohen to Prague and all these things, this former MI6 spy will discuss his dossier with the DOJ Inspector General. Alexander, big news?
I think this is huge news because let's be absolutely clear about this. The Steele dossier is the central document in the entire Russiagate saga. I mean, it competes with the original CrowdStrike report into the DNC alleged hacking. But if we focus on Steele and his dossier, Steele and his dossier were the original evidence of supposed collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. I've said previously in earlier programs that we have done about how it's absolutely clear that both Comey and Mueller originally used the dossier as their frame to actually carry out their investigation, a fact, by the way, that used to be admitted by the BBC. There are still articles on the BBC website that admit that. It was also the frame document that was used by people like Adam Schiff. It was also accepted largely by the media. It was accepted by many of the Democrats in Congress. And in fact, as we also know, it was the basis upon which all sorts of FISA warrants were obtained on people like Carter Page, and I suspect on more people to justify the surveillance activities that were carried out during and after the presidential election of 2016 on people in Donald Trump's campaign. So this is an absolutely key document. I'm also going to say what my belief is, which is also, I have noted, Andrew McCarthy's belief, that it was the Trump dossier, not any actual evidence from any actual Russian informant inside the Kremlin, which was the evidence that was provided to Barack Obama in August 2016 in this absolutely critical briefing that Director Brennan at the CIA arranged with Obama. So this is a key document. Christopher Steele is a key player. His importance is explained in a recent article by John Solomon in The Hill, in which John Solomon explains how Hillary Clinton and her campaign basically launched Christopher Steele to dig up this dirt in Russia against Donald Trump during the campaign in order to get Hillary Clinton elected, and how this evidence was forced by the Hillary Clinton campaign and its various acolytes on the Justice Department and on the FBI. And we've also got information, which we've discussed on previous programs, about how the British intelligence services appear to have been used to launder this information as it came back to the United States. And last but not least, we also know how Hillary Clinton and Fusion GPS, the third-party agency that she used, or her campaign used, to coordinate with Steele, also got Steele at the same time as he was plugging this document with the FBI and the Justice Department to go around the media and to get the media on board with all the allegations that were in this document, in this dossier, in order to inflict the maximum possible damage on Donald Trump. So this is a vital person, Christopher Steele. His dossier is centrally important. He has avoided up to now going public about it. Robert Mueller had two brief meetings with him, or rather his investigators did, which are barely touched upon in the report. Mueller's report avoids discussing the dossier in any detail. Now that it's admitted that it's unverified, it's become the absolute hot potato. No one in the Democratic Party or the intelligence community wants to touch. But finally, we have got to that position where Christopher Steele is going to be cross-examined properly about it.
Yeah, no one wants to touch Steele, and that's why for the past 2 years, the media rarely brings up Steele. They rarely say, where is Steele? Bring him to the U.S. The Democrats never say a word about Steele, Adam Schiff, Swalwell, Nadler, Pelosi.
No.
They never mention the word Steele because everyone knows that this guy is a partisan hack. Everyone knows that the dossier is complete fiction. It's a fairy tale. It's a fabrication. And I want you to get into Alexander. We've detailed many of the lies in the dossier. The unmaskings, the FISA surveillance, Papadopoulos, so many things, the Cohen passport, Prague, the Russian consulate in Miami, which doesn't exist. But I want you to really dig into the Obama-Brennan meeting and why that's so important. Because it's my understanding that even though Mueller says, he's certain there was 12 Russian GRU hackers that got the emails, the NSA doesn't back that up.
Exactly.
And your hunch, and from what I understand, McCarthy's hunch and your hunch, and from what I'm gathering, Mueller is basing, his theory that it was 12 Russian GRU agents. He's basing that on the Steele dossier. So get into that part of it.
Yeah. Yes, you see, the point is that what we have learned, and we learned this from an article that appeared in the Washington Post in June 2017, a year after, just under a year after the events that were described. What we know is that after meeting with an official from the GCHQ, which is the British equivalent of the NSA, a man called Bob Hannigan, who came to Washington. Brennan, who was the director of the CIA, sent by hand a special briefing to Obama, in which he said that the CIA had been provided with details of Putin's personal instructions to Russian intelligence to hack the DNC and to tilt the election in Donald Trump's favor. And it was this briefing that seems to have set the whole of the intelligence and security community of the United States. It seems to have unleashed them and caused all these various investigations and intrigues that up to then had been going on to go into overdrive with massive surveillance, massive unmaskings, all sorts of things going on. Now, we don't know this for a fact. The CIA are continuing to insist that they have this human agent within the Kremlin. But in fact, as both I and Andrew McCarthy and I should also add the Moon of Alabama, have all analyzed the information. If you read it carefully, what is being said is that there is a source within the Kremlin who talks to an informer who then passes that information on. And that seems to describe exactly the Steele dossier and the way the Steele dossier was allegedly created. And the fascinating thing is that if you actually go to the steps that were taken after that August 2016 briefing, if you look at the FISA warrants, if you look at the evidence that was circulated across the bureaucracy, there is no evidence that anybody refers to an actual informant who is separate and independent to the Steele dossier. So all the evidence, to my mind, and I'm not the only person saying this, As I said, Andrew McCarthy is also saying it. The Moon of Alabama is also saying it. All the evidence to me points clearly to this information that was provided to Obama in August 2016 being derived from the Steele dossier. That is the only set of documents which alleges that it captured instructions supposedly given by Putin inside the Kremlin to people within the intelligence community, which supposedly authorized a Russian interference campaign in the US election. And if I can just add a bit further, I think that it was that information that then went back and informed the assessment upon which Mueller's famous indictment of the 12 Russian supposed GRU officers is based, because the CIA thought that it had this evidence, this intelligence coming out of the Kremlin. So somebody went back to the CrowdStrike report, put it all together with this intelligence, concluded that they had, from all of this, the evidence that the Russians had carried out the hacking. And as for the 12 GRU officers, we know that didn't come from the NSA. It's been suggested that Mueller got the names of those GRU officers from a wire diagram provided by the NSA in a completely separate report discussing the operations, the entirely different operations of a certain Russian intelligence unit. So all of these different pieces were put together to create the impression that there was a case, but the key evidence was the Steele dossier.
Yeah, and if this is true, if this holds up, it means that it is Brennan, the former CIA director, that is the ringleader of this entire soft coup against Trump. I mean, it all goes right to Brennan meeting with Obama, at that moment in time. It means Brennan is in big, big trouble if this pans out.
Well, he is the pivotal player because he provided Obama with intelligence in August 2016.
And Obama will throw him under the bus.
Well, indeed, absolutely. Which,
that's for sure.
which he said was coming from an informant, from a source within the Kremlin. And if it turns out that that source is actually the Steele dossier, which we now know to be absolute nonsense, then of course, I mean, he's utterly discredited. I mean, he misinformed disastrously the President of the United States. I should make it very clear, by the way, that what Brennan would have provided Obama would not have been the raw dossier. It wouldn't have been the entries in the dossier. It would have been an assessment drawn up by the CIA based on the dossier. So Obama wouldn't have seen the dossier in its raw form. He would have seen the CIA's, if you like, re-editing of it, its reconstruction of it, which would have made it, no doubt, seem a lot more impressive than it actually was. The same was true, by the way, about the FISA court. The FISA court wasn't shown the raw dossier. It was shown summaries of it, which the FBI on this occasion prepared. So both the FISA court and Comey, exactly, Comey, exactly. So Comey provided summaries to the FISA court. Brennan provided summaries to Obama. They wouldn't have realized what a pathetic document the underlying document actually was. The key point to understand is that Christopher Steele was talking to everybody. He was talking to British intelligence. He was talking to the media. He was talking to the Justice Department. He was talking to the FBI. And it seems that through all of these various people that he was talking to, he was also talking to members of Congress. He was in touch with John McCain, as we know. He was talking to lots and lots of people. And the result was an echo chamber effect, where all of these different people were getting this information, not always realizing that, this information was being passed on to other people. And they were hearing the same material coming from all sorts of different places, not realizing that it was all coming from one source.
Yeah, so Steele now cut a deal.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Well, the reason he's cut a deal, and we are basing this on information provided by Politico, is because it seems that Horowitz, who is the Inspector General of the FBI, is going to publish a report which is going to be extremely critical of Steele. And I suspect that what Steele is worried about is that he could be facing criminal charges. We know that Republican senators have previously pressed the Justice Department to bring criminal proceedings against Steele because of Steele's propensity to talk to the media and his breaches of the law. He's breaking the law by the way in which he did that. So I think Steele is worried about that. He may also be worried that there may be even more serious charges down the line. So he's now agreed to talk, apparently, in what I suspect is a rather desperate attempt to clear his name, or at least to defend himself. And this talk that he's going to bring along an incredibly expensive, high-profile US attorney, whom he's going to pay $30,000 for a single interview. That's a very, very expensive attorney, by the way. And one wonders what he thinks he's going to achieve by that. But it's clear that Steele is not doing this because he wants to. It's doing this because he feels he has to. And maybe he's worried that if he doesn't do it and he doesn't preempt this meeting, he's going to face demands from the United States, from the Justice Department in the United States, for him to be handed over by the British to the US authorities to be investigated in the United States in extradition proceedings, possibly, or other kinds of proceedings, which he doesn't want to have to face. So he's trying to preempt this by agreeing to speak to the Justice Department, to the FBI, to Horowitz, and eventually, I suspect, to John Durham, the attorney that Attorney General William Barr has appointed to look into all of this mess.
So now, who could Steele rat out? He's cut his deal and he's looking to save his hide. Mm-hmm. Who can Steele bury? Like if he really starts to sing, he really starts to talk, he really starts to, show Barr and everyone else, Durham, where the bodies are buried. How much damage could Steele do? Well, because on a side note, Alexander, there are reports, and I've seen a lot of these comparisons on Twitter from various journalists that Mueller was also manipulating a lot of the underlying evidence. Yeah. That he had a lot of the documents and underlying evidence that he had before he placed it into his 400-page report. He was manipulating a lot of the documents so that he could point to some sort of nefarious obstruction by Trump. So there was a lot of bad things going on here.
Right. First of all, we'll come to Mueller in a moment because I think that's extremely important, by the way, and that needs to be dealt with thoroughly. But firstly, the people that Steele can point fingers to are firstly the people he interacted with within the Justice Department and within the FBI. Various FBI agents, people like Peter Strzok, people he met in Rome. Bruce Orr's wife, Glenn Simpson. But also, of course, lots of people he met in the media. And at the end of the day, the other thing I think he's going to have to do is he's going to have to come clean, fully clean, about his sources. Did he really possess sources, the kind of sources in Russia that he says he did? And he's named some extraordinary names in his interactions with the State Department. I forgot to mention the State Department as being another agency that Steele was talking to. So he mentioned these two very, very prominent Russian officials, Vyacheslav Trubnikov, who is a former member of the Russian intelligence service, and Vladislav Surkov, who is one of Putin's top aides. Was he really in contact with them? I'm very skeptical about that.
Yeah, the State Department was skeptical too. I mean, they flagged it right away that Steele was talking bullshit.
Absolutely, of course they were. So he's going to have to just talk about that, and he's also going to have to talk about his American sources, because it's now very clear that an awful lot of Americans had inputs into the dossier as it was being created. I mean, as these memos were coming out from Steele, people were coming forward and talking to him and telling him things, and he was putting that, apparently using that material in the dossier. I mean, if I may say so, that has been clear from the day the dossier was first published by BuzzFeed. If you examined it carefully, it was clear that some of the sources were in fact American, not Russian. So who were these sources, and how did all that happen? So Steele knows an awful lot. And of course, I mean, he can confirm what I am sure all of us have known all along. He knew right from the beginning that he was working for Hillary Clinton and her campaign.
There you go. But he could put it on record.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't believe he had any doubts about that. And if he confirms it, then I think he puts Glenn Simpson in a very difficult position, because Glenn Simpson has sort of denied it. Now, can I come to Mueller? Because, of course, I mean, Mueller's greatest...
Real quick, would that put Glenn Simpson at risk of perjury?
I think so. I mean,
because he has testified, I believe, twice.
Absolutely. And I mean, I read Glenn Simpson's testimony, and already it's becoming very difficult to reconcile some of the things that Glenn Simpson has said and with some of the things that we are now starting to learn. And I have to say this frankly, I think we're going to find that Glenn Simpson was far more heavily involved with the things that Steele was doing than he's admitted to. I mean, one of the things that Glenn Simpson, for example, tried to evade or sort of deny was that his knowledge of the fact that Steele was talking to the media. Now, I mean, Steele was talking to lots of people in the media, as is now clear, and I don't believe Glenn Simpson wasn't aware of that.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, in fact, I'm pretty sure that Glenn Simpson, my own belief is that Glenn Simpson put him up to it.
I agree with that assessment.
We'll see.
Now,
anyway. Now, Mueller. Now, I mean, when we did, just on the day that Mueller's report was published, we did a live. And I said that one of the most extraordinary things about the Mueller report is the way that it completely ignores Steele's dossier. You wouldn't know the dossier itself existed. I mean, he deals with some of the facts, some of the allegations that come out of the dossier, but he completely ignores the dossier. That already looked to me incredibly manipulative. But now we're learning more and more things, and this comes back to Mueller's use of his underlying material, because there's now been disclosed, I think by, it's Sarah Carter this time who's brought it out most thoroughly. We now have all kinds of documents, a transcript of a telephone conversation between John Dowd, who is one of Donald Trump's attorneys, and Mueller's Mueller's people, in which they were discussing Flynn. And Mueller, in his report, uses that conversation between Dowd and Mueller's team to try and make it seem as if Dowd was putting some kind of pressure on Mueller to slow boat the investigation of Flynn. And it's part of the obstruction allegations. And in fact, now we've had the whole transcript. And it's clear that Mueller has edited that transcript in an incredibly dishonest way. I mean, he's made it, he's edited out all a point where Down makes it perfectly clear that he's not seeking any sort of confidential information, for example, and that he's concerned about, he's concerned about the president, and he's also concerned about the fate of the country. So Mueller made a perfectly normal and proper telephone conversation between an attorney, Dowd, and Mueller's team. He's spun it and edited it to make it seem like something very inappropriate and sinister. Now, that is deeply manipulative, and as I said, I would say, frankly, dishonest. And it does make you wonder how much more dishonesty there is in that report. And I come back to this question of Mueller's use of his sources, his use of Steele, which he doesn't really admit to. I mean, Steele formed the frame narrative. That's the BBC's description, by the way, not mine. The frame narrative of the entire Mueller investigation, and before that, of the Comey investigation, before Mueller took it over. And Mueller, you'd never get that impression from reading Mueller's report. So if we finally get to the bottom of the sort of things that Steele was doing, we've already seen examples of how Mueller, as I said, distorts his evidence and manipulates his evidence. I think we could find that there's an awful lot more went on in that respect than this important but perhaps not central issue of the way in which the Dowd conversation was distorted. And I don't think that's going to look good for Mueller at all. It explains why, by the way, he's so reluctant to give evidence before Congress. I was
just about to say the same. It explains why he doesn't want to testify. It also probably explains his very strange statement that he made the other day as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he wants to keep the thing focused on the Russians rather than ultimately on himself and on the way in which this whole Russiagate investigation was conducted from even before the time when he was himself appointed.
Boy, if I was Brennan, Comey, Page, Strzok, Simpson, Hillary Clinton, all these people, I would be losing sleep right now with the news that Steele is going to be talking to the DOJ. I mean, I would just
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, we were hearing about how Comey and Brennan were arguing over the Steele dossier, with each of them denying that they'd given a special weight to it, and each insisting that it was the other who did so. And in fact, we know from people like Trey Gowdy, who's seen the underlying paperwork. We haven't, but he was a member of Congress and he was able to go and look at these things. Gowdy says it's Comey who had the better of that argument. So it looks as if it was Brennan who was pushing this dossier and doing it most aggressively. And as I said, if my belief, Andrew McCarthy's belief, and the Moon of Alabama's belief, and the belief of many other people, which is that this information that Brennan provided to Obama in August 2016, which I consider to be the single most important event in the whole Russiagate investigation, really was the Steele dossier, or was derived from the Steele dossier, then frankly, there is a bomb going to explode under former Director Brennan.
Oh my God! Finally, Steele. Finally, Steele is going to speak.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's going to be a challenge, I think, for the investigators to get him to speak, because, I mean, I can easily see all sorts of evasions, prevarications, hiding behind the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, but they're closing in. They're closing in.
Finally.
Yeah, they're finally closing in. It's about time. All right, Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. Also, make sure to hit that like button as well. That helps us out a lot. Go to the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt. like the one that I am wearing, or an embroidered polo like the one that Alexander Mercouris is wearing.
And 100% cotton.
100% cotton, yeah.
Beautifully made,
Nice
fits
shirts.
perfectly, perfect in all weather, or at least hot weather and cooler weather, like we're having today, by the way. We had some very hot days a few days ago. London weather is very changeable. Now it's much cooler, but it's absolutely a joy to wear, whatever weather it is.
And you have a couple of mugs there as well. We also sell mugs.
Do. I certainly
hold
do.
those up a little bit.
I've got this one, which is it's got our actual Duran logo, and I've also got this one, which is the logo of Moscow, which, as I said, has the double-headed eagle, which is also ours, our logo also. It points to the east and the west, which is like the Duran does. We cover all points of the compass, and we have St. George and the dragon. St. George slaying the dragon of fake news and untruth, which is what the Duran sets out to do. And beautiful mugs are really a joy to drink.
And we have some, what new products do we have coming out? We have tank tops coming out soon, and I'm also going to announce that we're going to start putting out some stickers and stuff. Some smaller items, some smaller accessories that we'll get onto the site as well. So keep an eye out for those. And you can follow us on Instagram, the Duran_com. So check us out there as well. And go to our site, theduran.com, to see all the news that we're pushing out every day. And of course, you can donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar as well. So donate to us. That really helps out a lot. And if you go to the Duran shop as well, you will find an ebook on Brexit, where Alexander wrote the foreword to that ebook. And that ebook has the transcripts of, I believe, 4 or 5 of our videos. I think 5 of our videos, if I'm not mistaken. So we have those transcripts there, along with a foreword from Alexander. Alexander, you want to explain your foreword a little bit?
I think by quite widespread acceptance, we were the site that basically described Brexit best. I mean, because we described both the complexities of the intrigues in London as the political establishment tried to sabotage Brexit. But we never lost the underlying thread, which is that this is a case of a democratic referendum voted by the people, in which the people of England and Wales, but also a majority in Britain overall, voted for Brexit, and that this is basically an attempt to sabotage that vote and to, in effect, abolish a major democratic step taken in Britain, which has implications for democracy in Britain and everywhere. And in that foreword that Alex referred to, I explain how way back in 2016, after the referendum, we predicted that if that happened, if the British establishment tried to reverse a democratic vote by the British people, they would destabilize their own country and set the scene for a political force to sweep the board outside London, in England and Wales, as is happening now. So we predicted in 2016 the present crisis in Britain, and we also described in our programs very accurately how that crisis has evolved and how the political system in Britain has unraveled. It's all in that book.
All right, you can pick up that book. The link is in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.